Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast, Best Ball Edition. We are live here on Twitter, YouTube, wherever you're happening to be listening to us. And welcome. Great day to be great. Happy Wednesday. My name is Ian Hartitz, joined by PFF's finest, Dwain, McFarland, and Nathan Janhke. And we are back here for another edition of Underdog Fantasy's Best Ball. As always, you can use code PFF to get half off a PFF subscription. All you got to do is go to Underdog, deposit at least $10, use that $10 to enter a contest, and hell, you can deposit way more than that. They will actually match your first deposit up to $100. All you got to do is use code PFF. So with all that said, gentlemen, how's it going? Dwain, you first, man.
Oh, dude, doing good. I feel like we've talked before already today, Ian.
At some point, maybe talked a little bit AFC South. Nathan, how about you?
Doing well, picking at near the start of the draft again, so probably will get a wide receiver here, but we'll see.
Ooh, Nate already calling the shot. We are all three in this edition of the Underdog Best Ball Mania. Nate the Great's picking out a spot 4. I am all the way down at 110. Dwain, D-Mac, sick. Did your kid pick that out for you, Dwain? You're all the way down at the turn at 112. I don't know. It's a perfectly fine username. I don't know why I said that. I'm sorry.
No, that's my that's my old gamer tag from way back in the day, Call of Duty.
Ooh, there we go. Well, Nate has made the first pick, just regular PFF Nate Janhke. Justin Jefferson at the 104. Nate, I've done, again, a number of these drafts at this point, and at first I was leaning more towards, getting 2 or 3 running backs early, but last week was one of the first times I was able to come away with a couple of these stud receivers. Really liked how that turned out. Do you have a preference right now in terms of going wide receiver or running back in round 1? I know it depends on the spot, but just ideally, which one would you like to get at value?
I think I'm pretty happy with this early first-round pick where I can get a wide receiver early, and then once it gets to me in the second and third round, go running back again, since I think there's a decent number of good running backs available at the turn there with the second and third round. So definitely happy with that kind of approach.
I am now going to be forced to make a tough decision. Najee Harris off the board. Maybe not. Austin Eckler remaining as the RB1. Also got Devontae and CeeDee Lamb. I am going to go ahead and sign up for Austin Eckler. Eckler said it himself. He thinks he should be a number 1 overall fantasy back. He said because availability is the best tool in fantasy football. And I'm not quite sure if that's his argument that he necessarily is the top running back in the league because of that. But hey, I mean, truly with his pass catching role in that offense, 20 freaking touchdowns last year. Hard to go too wrong with Austin Eckler. Dwain, you're on the clock after this pick. What's your thought process at the turn? Before you were saying you love to get your Stephon Diggs, CeeDee Lamb twist. Unfortunately,
no, I can't ever do it in any of these damn drafts. It's pissing me off. So I'm definitely going to go ahead and get my Lamb exposure. He's who I have in the queue. We've talked about him multiple times, but I feel great about where he's at. And so the question really for my second pick comes down to, I want to go ahead and take one of the elite tight ends, or do I want to go ahead and grab a running back? And I think I'm actually going to go ahead and get one of my backs here. And I'm going to take DeAndre Swift over Dalvin Cook.
Wow. Member half PPR over at Underdog Fantasy. With Dalvin Cook, though, something I've been on record worried about was the potential looming suspension. It does seem, not looming, just possibility of a suspension. It does seem like the way that these court dates have continued to be pushed further into the future past this season, we are now no longer nearly as worried about that potential for Dalvin Cook as opposed to Alvin Kamara. Dwain, talk to people, though, about getting CeeDee Lamb and why did you go with DeAndre Swift over Dalvin Cook, even with half point?
With Cook, it's still just a matter of we have a player that is aging. He's also had the shoulder issues. I like the offense. I really do love the Vikings offense, and I still like Cook, but I will be under exposure at ADP on Cook this season. Most of my exposure probably will come beyond ADP, but just with DeAndre Swift as a player, we know going into year 3, he checks the explosive play box that we want to see, and he's heavily involved in the passing game. So I just love backs that check both of those boxes. We'll see what happens. Jamal Williams still going to be involved, but I think that we could see the Lions offense take a step forward. So I've got 2 players I've got graded really closely together, and I just went with the younger one.
Dwain, come on, man. Do you not pay attention to the news? Dalvin Cook is getting snaps at wide receiver, man. Have we ever heard about a running back getting this opportunity before? All tongue-in-cheek slander aside, I took Devontae Adams at the 2-3. Man, I'll take that. Early round 2, Devontae Adams, someone that I have bumped out of the top 5, but as we're starting to see in these drafts, the public is coming along to it. Certainly more target competition than in Green Bay, but Derek Carr, all the haters out there, I don't think I've been watching him play football over the past 2 seasons, much improved. And similar to Kirk Cousins, man, you're just going to be hard-pressed to find too many passing statistics that paint Carr as anything other than an above-average quarterback. As we know, Devontae, all sorts of millions and millions of reasons for the Raiders to feed him the ball, and obviously one of, if not the most talented wide receiver in the entire NFL. Nate, you're going to be up here in 3 picks. You went ahead and went Justin Jefferson round 1. You looking to grab a running back yet, or is there a wide receiver on the board that you think would pair nicely?
I think I'll at least stay at running back for this first pick. A couple of guys that I would be perfectly fine with here: Alvin Kamara, Williams, Leonard Fournette, all in that range of running backs. Maybe AJ Brown with my 3rd pick, but we'll see if there's still one of those running backs that I just mentioned still available for me the 3rd time around.
Well, you're on the clock, man. Go and get him. Nate went ahead and got Alvin Kamara. I would probably lean towards Fournette there. It's a toss-up, though, if we can rule aside the Kamara potential suspension issue. Based on how this draft is going, though, Fournette could very well be back there around the turn. Interestingly, though, Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews both out before the top 20. Okay, they were both gone after 20 picks in the draft. Dwain, Mark Andrews was someone that we were discussing, I think, on last week's edition of this as, quietly has had a pretty nice offseason for himself. Before, back in February, March, we could look at all 5 of the big top tight ends and have one kind of red flag or another. Having Lamar Jackson looking to go back into more of a run-first offense potentially and having to split the offense with Hollywood and Rashad Bateman, you just wondered if Andrews was going to have the sort of volume to kind of repeat that overall tight end 1 performance. But you take Marquise Brown out of the picture, all of a sudden Mark Andrews is plenty viable even inside those top 20 picks.
Yeah, and I mean, Andrews has just been an explosive player, and he scores a lot of touchdowns. So and we've seen Mark Andrews really shine in this offense in previous years whenever they were more run heavy. And so to your point, now if you have Hollywood Brown gone, yes, Rashad Bateman will step into the other role, but we can see a run heavy offense support 2 offensive pass catchers. Where it gets messy is once that goes to 3. And so I think, with the situation being now that we do think they're going to run the ball more, but there's only 2 guys they have to feed, I'm perfectly fine with Andrews. In fact, if people want to put him as their number 1 over Kelce, based on the age, I can get that too.
Nathan, Javonte Williams off the board with your 3rd pick. Now, last year, it really was 50-50 between Gordon and Javonte. 1A, 1B. This was not Gordon on early downs, Javonte on passing downs. Basically, whoever was in the game was being used as the 3-down back, and then they just kind of rotate series. So are you anticipating that being similar as last year, or with Javonte objectively being the better running back and just having Gordon being a free agent for that long before Denver brought him back? Do you think we could see this go more 60-40, maybe even 70-30 in Javonte's favor?
I definitely think it can get closer to 60-40 and hopefully even more to that extreme. You just have a guy who was a rookie last year. Typically, we see rookies see more playing time in their 2nd year. We see Gordon nearing the age where we stop seeing those running backs at that age play altogether in the NFL. So I think we'll definitely, just from the direction the 2 players are going, it'll be more in Williams' favor, and then just the offense with Russell Wilson should be a lot better. Hopefully more red zone opportunities, more touchdowns for both backs. But in this case, I care about the touchdowns for Williams.
My 3rd pick, I went ahead and locked down Indianapolis wide receiver 1, Michael Pittman. I just wrote my Colts team preview yesterday and just kind of cemented everything I was already thinking about Pittman. We have a player as the undisputed number 1 pass game option. He was last year, even more so this year with T.Y. Hilton and Zach Pascal out of the issue. They bring in Alec Pierce, who sounds like more than anything just the sort of prime field stretching complement that's not necessarily going to compete for that number 1 role, but might be able to kind of open up things throughout the rest of the offense. And hell, Pittman proved last year he could be a borderline wide receiver 2 with Wentz under center, and Matt Ryan is a clear upgrade in every sense of the word. So with Pittman, hey, he seems to be at least a top 20, top 25 talent. He has a top 10 workload in the quarterback upgrade. Dwain, Pittman is someone that across this entire jumble 2 wide receiver tier, I do think him and Terry McLaurin deserve to be at the top of it.
Yeah, I have Pittman at 11 right now. His ADP here, I think, is 17. and someone just sniped me. So I really appreciate that. Like, he was going to be one of my 2 picks. But I pivoted off. So Kyle Pitts was going to be my pick anyway. That's why I wanted to pass the tight end. I've been noticing in these drafts, like Pitts, where you're taking Andrews and Kelsey, yes, we love them, but Pitts usually gets back to you at the turn here. And so I just think, look, we've got quarterback questions, we've got offense questions, but I don't think we necessarily have target questions for Kyle Pitts. We don't have talent questions for Kyle Pitts either. So I love snagging him. And I went ahead and went with DJ Moore. And my theory was DJ Moore's already played with a crappy quarterback and at least, managed to still, get a low end wide receiver too. Whereas with these other guys, they haven't proven to us yet, Ian, that they can play with a super crappy quarterback and still produce.
Also, fairly true for Terry McLaurin. Now, we have seen him, and I know people out there have their opinions about PFF grades, but I think one of the best things PFF grades do is help show players that don't have the same sort of counting numbers are being brought down by their surrounding environment. That's why Terry McLaurin, when you look at, just his overall efficiency numbers, yards per route run, yards per reception, those sort of things, more of a top 20, top 30 receiver. But then you see that top 12, 13 PFF receiving grade, and it matches what you see on the film. This man's an absolute baller. So with Carson Wentz there, he is the best quarterback of Terry's career. And that's with all due respect to Alex Smith, but the post-injury Alex Smith, no, I am taking Wentz over him. And Ryan Fitzpatrick, he couldn't play a single half of Terry, so I don't really even count him in that conversation. Similar to Pittman, offense is wide open. Nate, are you with me on Terry McLaurin also being someone we should prioritize in that range? Or do you look at him just more so like a low-end wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, because that's what he's been the first 3 years in the league?
Nate's going to make his pick first, Ian.
Well, I guess.
I was just on George Kittle. I had him Kittle ready to go, but I will pivot to Chris Godwin. So.
Sniped. Well, now you can talk about Terry McLaurin because I'm freaking running the show, Nate.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Terry McLaurin, I think, is a great wide receiver. I think ideally, if he had better quarterback play, he'd be in the top 10 range. But I think he's just someone who will very solidly be in that wide receiver 2 conversation. Like, he might not have the upside to be a top 5 wide receiver with the quarterback play, but I also think his floor is very high with how good of a wide receiver he is. So definitely happy to get him in this range.
So Nate, and so whenever you look at Terry McLaurin, DJ Moore, Deontay Johnson, DK Metcalf, all have the same questions, right? These players should be going ahead of, Mike Evans. There's a lot of other guys that in a normal year if they had quarterbacks and they were in good offenses because they're so young, they've shown us they're so talented, they would be going super high. But they all happen to land in teams that we don't think are going to win a lot. We got a lot of questions about quarterback. But if you have to choose one player out of that tier, DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin, Deontay Johnson, DJ Moore, who's your favorite?
I think I would go with DJ Moore. I could go with Metcalf if they do something like trade for Baker Mayfield, just because with Moore and McLaurin, we know how they do with a not as good quarterback, but we don't know how good DK Metcalf will be with the downgrade at quarterback.
Yeah. That's kind of how I am too. I could see a path for any one of them. I was just really trying to make sure that you missed your pick. Did you see that, Ian? I timed it right as Nate was picking.
Well done, Dwain. Well, all right, Dwain.
It was a good pick. It was a good pick by Nate too. Getting David Montgomery in the 5th round is that's pretty solid.
Just quickly on Metcalf, because Dwain, I like a lot of things about you, Dwain, not to get too sentimental on here, but the one thing I really like in your player.
But here's the thing I hate, Dwain. Like, I'm waiting for this part.
The thing I really like in your player evaluation process is considering, like, am I going to regret potentially, 4 months from now not taking this guy? Like, does this dude have such a big potential boom in his range of outcomes that we're going to regret taking him? And I do look at DK Metcalf as that player. I get it. The quarterback situation is atrocious, but man, he's going behind other wide receivers like Tyreek Hill, like AJ Brown, these guys that I think aren't in a different stratosphere of Metcalf in terms of talent, and also in somewhat of an iffy situation. So having Lockett there does change things a little bit, but like, there's a reason why Metcalf was a consensus top 5 dynasty wide receiver this time last year. Are we maybe leaning into the landing spot issues a little bit too much with him, Dwain?
Well, I think if we were really overreacting with it, he would be ranked even. Do you see this stack that this guy just built?
Tua just Hill? Went at 55th overall
because he has Tyreek and Jalen. So he had to make sure that he made the stack.
Marijuana is legal in a lot of states. Oh my gosh!
Definitely going to a 6th round. That was my guy. I had him queued up.
No, Nate. He wasn't coming to you. He wasn't making it to you, Nate. I was going to take
what
it.
Absolute hell is that. Like, look, guys, go have fun with it, but you can draft him 10 rounds. Oh my gosh. All right, I got
Gonna have to go with Teddy Bridgewater in the 6th round to make sure he doesn't get him.
This guy has Ian on tilt. And he didn't even snipe him.
Concentration is freaking broken. I can't even make a pick right now. Okay, I'm going to go with Travis Etienne in the hopes that if there is look, Travis Etienne, this is another good way of thinking about these players if you are doing these offseason best ball drafts. Like, is their ADP going to stay still, go down, or go up? And ETN, if we find out that James Robinson is going to start the year on the PUP or IR and the Achilles issue, that is a situation where ETN, I do think, would then jump into the potential top 15, top 16 at the position, currently going outside the top 20. Understand ETN's got his own injuries coming back from, but just the certainty that I think the industry has with Robinson potentially coming back sooner rather than later, something I just don't agree with. Now we got Dwain here. When I was picking ETN, I was going under the assumption that I thought I could get Kyler on the way back. Maybe, just maybe, Dwain took Lamar first, but
you're going to get him. No, I'm going to turn Kyler now that I know your plan. Dude, no, you hit me again. Like ETN, was the pick that I really wanted. He was sliding, so I mean it's a really good pick by you, Ian. So I'll give you that. So I switched gears, went ahead and went with Lamar Jackson, and then I gotta let me unqueue some of these other players so I don't accidentally take the wrong one.
Not even gonna ask Dwain a question while he's on the clock, Ian.
I have my people in my queue, so I'm good. Like it should be Michael Thomas. But.
Michael Thomas, you're not concerned, dude. I
am. I don't have exposure to Thomas, and I have him in this tier. And here's the thing with Thomas: look, we haven't seen him in a year and a half. I get it. Like I totally understand that. But the last time we saw him, he is a 30% target per route run player. Like they just don't make many of those in the universe. So we have to acknowledge that his range of outcomes could be that he's still a 30% guy. Like Olave is going to be a rookie. I know you and I both like him, the Ohio State University. I get it, Ian. But I think he could complement, Thomas well, right? He can be the field stretcher. We know Kamara is going to catch stuff underneath. I think still easily if Thomas is healthy, and we don't know. He still apparently has quote unquote one more hurdle to pass. But the way that the coaching staff was talking about him, they were basically saying, look, Olave is our first round pick, but we're getting another first round pick as well because we should have Michael Thomas back. So I think he's going to be back if he's healthy. I think the range of outcomes are good enough. Like you can go into his age. I want to say he's aged like 30 this season. So, I mean, he's definitely on, like he's had injuries. He is older. So I acknowledge all those things, but I think in a perfect world, like I still end up with someone that's going to get 26% of the targets for the Saints and could score some touchdowns. So I like it.
And I don't buy the idea that the Saints are going to again be this bottom 3, bottom 5 team throwing the ball. I think they were last year because they had to be. I mean, Jameis really, it was his first year in New Orleans. Look at his freaking receivers. Like we were trying to hype up Marquez Callaway as an actual thing in August because there's nobody else to throw the ball to. So yeah, they didn't throw the ball around the yard because their best chance to win was probably trying to shorten those games, run the ball with Alvin Kamara and see what happens. But you add Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, Jarvis Landry. I'm not saying they're going from 32 to freaking 10th or anything in pass play rate, but I think something more around league average, below average is reasonable. So, Nate, you're up on the clock. Do you want me to ask you a long-winded question to throw you off here, or do you just want to kind of talk?
I need at least 30 seconds for you to ask the question.
How are you feeling about the team so far, Nate?
So far, so good. A couple players that I wished I would have had that went right before me, but I have running backs that I'm happy with, wide receivers I'm happy with. Hopefully I can get some nice stacks going forward with the Vikings and the Buccaneers, but we'll see how the rest of the draft plays out.
Gronk just went pick 67. That's probably the earliest I've seen him go.
Did he just sign while the show was going or something? Like I've never seen him go that early.
I'm going to be pissed if we lose our Gronk discount, man. That's like my whole basis of strategy right now. It's like, I can get Gronk, after round 10. You're taking that away from me in raising? Come on, man. Nathan went ahead and took one of my favorite players to draft right now, Adam Thielen at pick 69. Very nice job by you, Nate. I just think Thielen is like the epitome of the player where we're drafting him right now as this, lower end wide receiver 3. But the second week 1 comes along, if the guy's healthy, it's going to be hard not to project him much higher. Like Nate, he is old. He had an injury last year. But my God, all the guy does is score touchdowns, and this Vikings offense should be throwing a lot of them.
Yeah, he feels like a player that for the past 3 or 4 years now, it's like, okay, this is the year he's going to decline. Okay, this is the year he's going to decline. And then he keeps on being a top 20 wide receiver. And I know I went a little early with them, but with Justin Jefferson, I wanted to get a couple Vikings guys on this team, so I was happy to get him there.
Dwain, through the early parts of the draft, you have been able to get CeeDee Lamb, DeAndre Swift, Kyle Pitts, DJ Moore, Lamar Jackson, and Michael Thomas. So 3 wide receivers, 1 running back, 1 quarterback, and 1 tight end. We've had a lot of discussions on the PFF Fantasy Football podcast about, using these rounds 7 through 10 to really shore up any holes that you have remaining in your roster before just, the positions become too depleted of talent to really do anything in the later rounds. How are you approaching these next 4 rounds based on your current roster construction?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely got a hit running back, but after that, I'm open. I've got my tight end. I've got my quarterback. So, I mean, not that I'm against taking necessarily another quarterback, maybe around like round 10, but we're in round 7 right now. So, I mean, on Underdog, you have to be careful, like, because the wide receivers can just go bananas and like fly off the board. So I typically try to have 3 of them by round 6, which I did accomplish that goal. So yeah, I really got to tighten up and focus on my backs here, but I think I can also continue to stack on some more receivers if I want, because I have Lamar Jackson and Kyle Pitts already on the team.
Anyone you especially are looking for that
I'm not saying a word to you right now. It's 2 picks until your turn. Hell no.
Oh my gosh, D Griff just sniped DeAndre Hopkins from me. Was trying to get that sweet Kyler Nuke stack. Not today, I guess. We got Tua going round
not so fast, my friend.
5, and then that's going on. My goodness. Well, I can't say the name of the guy on the clock right now, but you bad mofo, you better not be taking my next guy. All right, we're good. Ooh, this is tough. Dwain, if you have something you want to say, now's the time.
No, I'm good. I'm waiting. I'm going to see. I'm going to take what you don't take, probably.
I like Miles Sanders. Him versus Clyde versus CPAT is a good debate. They're in a similar
I have
tier.
my poker face. You're not getting any read.
Sky Moore, Brandon Ayuk, Renfro. I'm going to go with Sanders here and then probably loop around and get a wide receiver next because I think I'm more okay with the tier available at wide receiver. We'll take some Miles Sanders, someone that, as I dug into the Eagles a little more in team preview, like it wasn't – I was expecting to see Jalen Hurts was just dominating goal line usage, but Eagles running backs last year were actually still towards the top of the league in terms of carries inside the 5-yard line. The larger problem for Sanders was that Boston Scott was like 7 for 7 or something for touchdowns inside the 5 or 10-yard line, and Jordan Howard, now a free agent, was doing his thing too. I mean, people want Kenneth Gainwell to happen so bad. I just think they're kind of ignoring what Sanders can potentially bring to the table. Dwain, was Sanders the man you were looking at as you take Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Sky Moore?
Yep. I had Sanders and Edwards-Helaire at the top of the queue. I'm actually fine with both. I've spent more time now, like actually digging into the Chiefs. And so like at this point, I just feel like CEH, like, look, you and I don't want to say we're CEH badmouthers, but we've certainly not given him any love. But at this point, you're a 7th round pick on the Chiefs offense. You're still a 1st-round pick 2 years ago. Yes, you've never beat out Darrell Williams. Yes, you couldn't beat out Jerick McKinnon. Yes, you couldn't beat out, well, I guess Damian Williams decided for COVID, like, to leave the team. So you by default beat out Damian Williams, as a rookie. So look, there are definitely issues, and we know Ronald Jones can be good between the tackles. I think you could argue Ronald Jones is a better runner than any of the guys that, we just named. So I think Ronald Jones is definitely going to have a role. But what I'm hoping, man, is this really opens up. Hey, let's get Clyde Edwards-Helaire involved in the passing game. Let's go back to those old Brian Westbrook days, right? We've seen Andy Reid use the running back a lot in the passing game back in the day. But when you have Tyreek Hill and you got Travis Kelce, you got big arm Patrick Mahomes pushing the ball down the field, it just really wasn't in the cards the last few years to get the running back that involved in the passing game. But I think this year with Hill gone, like their offense is already evolving, right? Based on, I know this is like, it's just the cool thing. I don't know if it's cool. People are probably sick of hearing about 2 high safeties, right? Against Patrick Mahomes, but it's the truth. Like we saw the Chiefs offense last year, it changed in the middle of the season because they just couldn't hit all the big plays down the field. And they had to turn more into this methodical, let's take it down bit by bit. And they still hit some big plays, but the offense had to change. And I think within that, like we could see Clyde Edwards-Helaire be more involved in the passing game. And in round 7 on this offense, man, I'm willing to take a shot on Edwards-Helaire.
And hey, maybe having an offseason where he didn't have gallbladder surgery after the Super Bowl and dropped down to 160 pounds could be a positive. Like, this is what pisses me off more than anything about these offseason reports. Like, we have the running back lining up in the slot. We have dozens of players that are paid to play a game that are in the best shape of their life. No shit. But you can't tell us when the starting running back for the Super Bowl runner-up got down to 160 pounds. How did it take until 2022 for that story to come out? Like, what good are beat writers in Kansas City if they can't find that freaking topic at any point? So, you know, I'm pissed, guys. I am that between that and the 49ers, no one having any idea what Elijah Mitchell was set up for last year. It's just, you know, maybe the organization told everyone, like, you got to shut up about this. And, you know, I guess your hands were tied at that point. But my God, give us something. But got that off my chest. We'll go back to some positive vibes now. So, Nate.
And now back to Nathan.
Yeah, back to Nathan. Pick 93. You snagged Dallas Goedert. You know, where did Jalen Hurts is long gone, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
With Goedert, hey, when Ertz got traded last year in terms of total fantasy points the rest of the way, excluding week 18 because the Eagles rested their starter, Goedert was actually tied with Zach Ertz, ironic, as the tight end 4 during that stretch. He's always been someone we're waiting to have just a featured role in. My God, Nate, it's here. Like Goedert, if there is someone outside the top 5, you know, those kind of consensus top 5 tight ends that, at least from a talent standpoint, we know can break inside of it, Goddard's on that short list.
Yeah, there's very few talented young tight ends in the NFL, and he's one of them. Like, the only main concern is with A.J. Brown now in the offense, if that reduces his targets by too much. But I'm hoping, if anything, it opens up the offense, and the defense's focus on the wide receivers, leaving him open to do plenty in the middle of the field.
I am looking ahead at some wide receivers still on the board as we start to enter round 9. Christian Watson, Allen Lazard, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Robert Woods, Michael Gallup, Chase Claypool, among others. Dwain, I'm going to get to pick before you. I am looking to lock in MVS, classic better and best ball wide receiver. Among this group, though, because I'm picking in front of you, anyone that kind of stands out?
No, there's none, Ian.
None. No more wide receivers that Dwain likes the entire.
I don't like any of the receivers.
My goodness. Okay, well, Dwain, in the spirit of competition, is just making me carry the conversation ahead of his pick. Nate, we've picked 9 rounds. Who is your quarterback? Like, what else do you need to fill with your roster?
I just got Trey Lance for one of my quarterbacks. I'm hoping that no one else wants Kirk Cousins, that I'll be able to get him in a round or two to be my second quarterback. So I'm pretty balanced right now in terms of positions: 1 quarterback, 3 running backs, 4 wide receivers, 1 tight end. So fairly happy, can do basically what I want for these next couple of rounds, and then fill out the rest of the roster with the rest of it.
Trey Lance currently going pick 100. Got to think that would be on the rise if and when Jimmy Garoppolo is traded, which Kyle Shanahan said is still the plan. I mean, okay, they're actively saying they're going to trade Jimmy G. How could they start him in week 1 if he's still on the team? Like at this point, even if they're both on the same team, wouldn't we have to expect Trey Lance to start, guys?
Yeah, I'd say so. Like, it sounds like from what even players are saying that Trey Lance is stepping up. He's taking the leadership role. And I think with Jimmy G, it's just largely he had the injury. No one wants to trade for an injured quarterback. Probably wait for the first injury to happen, and when that does, trade will happen.
All right. I'm going to lean into a stack a little bit here. Go with my guy, Rondale Moore. Pair him up with Kyler. I already missed out on Zach Ertz before. It's a game of inches, guys, real life football and fantasy football. I'm finding out that the hard way here. With Rondale, though, maybe he still is the starting slot receiver. Like, the best case for the Cardinals offense, once Hopkins is healthy, is to have him on one side. We're going to have Rondale Moore in the slot, have Marquise Brown clearing out the other side, and then have Zach Ertz as your tight end. Yeah, throw Trey McBride out there for a little bit. Just keep A.J. Green and Antoine Wesley off the freaking field. Only in Arizona do we have to worry about this under Cliff Kingsbury, but it's a legit concern. Like, Dwain, we need to be, and you're finishing up your pick, so you can hear the second half of what I'm saying here, but fantasy football, we need to be so careful about not projecting what we hope is going to happen versus what we think is going to happen. Once Hopkins is healthy, who do you think are the Cardinals starting 3 wide receivers?
I think it will be Marquise Brown, Hopkins. Man, why are you doing this to me? I think it's probably AJ Brown, but like we're still gonna bet
who's in the slot.
AJ Green, AJ Green, yeah. But I look, Rondell Moore's still the right bet to place, right? Like we know that AJ Green just doesn't have the upside at this point. So what we're hoping for is that Marquise Brown's going to play on the outside, which he's done in his career. He's not a slot receiver. Like he plays outside. You let, Hopkins play outside. That opens the slot up for Rondell Moore. So I don't think we have to get too crazy with it. Like I think Cliff has kind of burned us enough that we just assume he's going to do like the weirdest thing, and just keep like AJ Green out there with Hopkins. But I think the bet that you place on Moore, if I'm drafting Kyler Murray, that's the time you can do it as well, right? That's when you want to go ahead and get your Rondell Moore exposure. And so for folks like I just made my 2 picks after I declined to comment on Ian's, went with Chase Claypool, Chase Edmonds. So now I have got at my receiver core, I've got CeeDee Lamb, DJ Moore, Michael Thomas, Sky Moore, Chase Claypool, half-point PPR. You have to play 3. There's also a flex option. At running back, I've got DeAndre Swift, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and I've got Chase Edmonds. So my last 2 picks, I do have a tight end, and Kyle Pitts, have my quarterback, Lamar Jackson. So at my last 2 picks, here's my reasoning. 1, Chase Claypool is the guy that people are just kind of forgetting, but he's still he's a third-year receiver that's shown us a lot of good things, and yards per route run, targets per route run, touchdowns per route run, like a lot of cool stuff that we love to look at. Like people are just writing Claypool off. Yes, it is a bad quarterback situation. We're not that crazy about the Steelers, but I did also get a little bit of correlation out of adding Claypool because he plays. Did I get correlation? Yeah, I did. Yeah, I was just making sure. I was like, no, I didn't. No, I do, because in week 17, I have Chase Claypool playing against Lamar Jackson. And so for those of you that have studied the Underdog tournament, you know that week 17 happens to be a really big freaking deal in the money weeks. The other guy I did look at was James Cook. I tried to leave him there for you, Janhke. I see he went the pick in front of you, but I went with Chase Edmonds instead, just because Edmonds checks 2 major boxes for me: explosive playmaker and catches passes. You heard that earlier with DeAndre Swift. So he checks those same 2 boxes. Yeah, kind of a crowded backfield. You got Sony Michel. You also have Raheem Mostert. And then you got Myles Gaskin still on the team. So I think it will be a committee, but I expect Chase Edmonds to lead the committee. And I think there is a scenario where maybe he gets up to 40, 50% of the work on the team. And I think he can come through with the receptions as well as the explosive plays and an offense that should have the arrow pointed up with McDaniel calling plays.
3 cheapest starting running backs right now are basically Chase Edmonds, Devin Singletary, or James Cook, depending on your thoughts. Probably Devin Singletary, even though Cook should get the more fantasy-friendly targets. And then whoever the hell you think is going to rise up inside that dumpster fire that is the Houston Texans' current offense. So, yeah, man, at that price point, man, I spent 3 hours today writing about the Houston Texans. I wanted to be optimistic. I kind of was for Brandon Cooks, and everyone else I just couldn't get behind. Nate, Dwain and I were kind of on a tough time limit today for our podcast because Dwain had another one coming up. So I immediately started off by getting into an argument about Dameon Pierce, and we weren't even talking about the Texans. So I'm feeling kind of passionate about this after going through. Why are we pricing Dameon Pierce as a legit, like, low-end RB3 when he never could take over an actual role at Florida? He goes in the 4th round, which is terrible. He goes to a Houston backfield that would literally use 4 running backs at different points last season. Like, I understand it's a wide open backfield, but my God, you could not pick a worse offense in terms of scoring upside. And like, how many injuries is he away from getting the job? I realize he could be the week 1 starter. He could also be freaking inactive for all we know with some of the guys they've added. Overall thoughts on Dameon Pierce, and if you think there's enough upside worth chasing, because I don't.
Yeah, like in the late rounds, but not where he's currently going. I think like Rex Burkhead, there was a point last season where he was the running back 3 for a week. I know he's like, 31, 32 years old at this point, but they liked him enough to give him a contract extension out of all the backs they had last year. And in terms of PFF grades, he is one of the higher graded receiving backs over the past couple of years. So I think Burkhead at the very least has that receiving role in Houston. So that leaves the rushing role, which Burkhead can still be a part of. And they added Marlon Mack. So it's like Burkhead's, he's not going to be the greatest guy to get in fantasy because we know exactly who he is. He's a role player who, he had his one good week, but he's just going to be someone who will take points away from the other running backs. But it's just a situation to avoid unless there's enough injuries that there's a clear guy.
Your fantasy team doesn't have a single Houston Texan on it this year. Just saying, might not be the worst thing ever. I went ahead and took Irv Smith at the end of round 11. Just one thing that I know Dwain takes good advantage of, and everyone should, honestly, but when you're drafting here and you're in a situation like I was where I wanted Irv. I also like Jacoby Myers there, some wide receivers. But looking ahead, at the guys that are picking next, Dwain and then another guy. And the other guy didn't have a tight end yet. So I was much less confident in Irv coming back to me if I had passed on him here. Dwain already has Kyle Pitts. So if I had seen that both teams in between me already had tight ends, yeah, maybe I do take the wide receiver there. But around 11, I probably already waited too long to get a tight end in the first place. Didn't want to completely miss on that again. Dwain, you got Ronald Jones, who I like there. If I still needed a running back, I probably would have taken. And also Jarvis Landry. You looking to get Jameis later? You sly dog, you.
I am looking to get Jameis later, but the Ronald Jones thing was honestly an auto pick. It was at the top of my queue, but it was fine, like where he was at. But I didn't really want him because I have Clyde Edwards-Helaire on the team, so I was actually toying around with taking either Isaiah Spiller or Michael Carter.
I went ahead and snagged Jacoby Myers, fresh off 130 targets. And hey, maybe he starts scoring touchdowns, guys. I understand. What's the phrase? If my aunt had a dick, she'd be my uncle. So there's a lot of different things we can kind of question about Jacoby and why haven't we seen it in his first 3 years in the league. But just looking at that Patriots offense, like for them to get rid of Jacob Johnson, their fullback, under just directly telling him, like, we're not going to use your position anymore. If anything, I think they're going to pass more. And Devontae Parker, I'm not saying he's out of the picture, but I just think he's more of going to be in that outside wide receiver conversation. So there are two tight ends. We're going to see some pass catching running backs involved, probably more so than even Brandon Bolden was last year. But if you just want to, and we are going to have our PFF projections live on the site here, hopefully within the next week or so. But I'm willing to bet, like, outside all the wide receivers that are going outside the top 50 at the position, Jacoby Myers probably has the highest target projection. Nate, you with me, man? Jacoby Myers season. Why not? He's going like 60th. Come on.
Yeah, I feel like this is the range where a ton of Patriots should be going off the board. I got Ramondre Stevenson like a round or so ago. Devontae Parker, this is around the time that I'd be happy to get him as well. The tight end's a little bit lower. It's just an offense where there's so many players, though. Like, I feel like they're going to have to cut at least one of their wide receivers that's a notable name because they're not going to be able to get all of them on the field, and they're going to want to use two tight end sets. So, like Nelson Aguilar, I don't know how much playing time he's going to see with all the wide receivers they have on the team.
6th ranked scoring offense from last year. Dwain, latest headlines are that Bill Belichick might be the one calling plays. I mean, he was just saying, like, we're not going to worry about it until week 1. Who cares who's calling plays right now? Just so classic Bill Belichick response. But it does seem like this bottom 5 rushing offense or this bottom 5 passing offense from last year. Not saying they're going to all of a sudden be embracing the pass like Brady and Moss in 2007 or anything, but if you had to guess kind of where the Patriots land in terms of pass run rate, I would kind of think they're far closer to average 16th than last year.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to be super heavy, passing. Like, I think they're going to continue to try to protect Mac Jones. It's not like we love their weapons. They've added players, but I think they still have a lot of, questions in the passing game. So I would expect them to play as conservative as they can, especially with Bill Belichick leading the way. But I mean, somewhere around average, I think would be fine for them. But it's hard to get excited about the offense overall, which is what, pushes the, the ADP of all these different players down. Like, overall, the offense feels vanilla. Overall, there are just a lot of players that they're going to spread it around to. But if there's one player I'm taking from the offense in the receiving game, it's definitely Jacoby Myers. And it's just a bet. And even if you just want to make it a bet on his talent, because he's clearly shown that he can demand targets, which is something not every player in the NFL can do. So yeah, I love the pick of Jacoby Myers.
Jalen Tolbert off the board early. That's what I get for showing my cue well before I am on the clock. But now we got Nathan on the clock. David Njoku just went. Cole Kmet a few picks before. Looking at the tight end range, I'm prioritizing Gerald Everett out of this group, but it is starting to get a little bit thin. Dwain, has your thoughts changed on kind of how deep the tight end class is this year? Because I know we say it every freaking summer that you can wait on tight end this time. And then freaking September turns around and I have to look at all my Jay Sternberger, Chris Herndon stacks and realize that I'm not going to score a damn point at tight end this season. But with that said, man, Gerald Everett, tight end 22, Hayden Hurst, potentially the Bengals' new starting tight end 24, Evan Ingram at tight end 26. At a minimum, it does. We'll see how the production goes, but just looking at guys that should be on the field, I believe the magic route rate for tight ends, 70% over the years. I do think we have more options than usual that should have the opportunity to put up bigger numbers.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I look at the tight ends, I don't know that I really want to say that it's like you said. I mean, we may feel that way early in the offseason. I think that was actually just more you than me. What we had talked about though is, were we really in on the top level guys, right? At the time, Andrew still had multiple mouths to feed in an offense that could turn back towards the run. Kelsey, we've got the question of age. Kyle Pitts, still a younger player, but he's sliding a little bit. Darren Waller's got new competition with Devonta Adams. I mean, so there were a lot of questions about the guys up top, right? And the opportunity costs. As far as the guys below, I feel like we think there are a lot of options, but I don't think we clearly can delineate them all really well yet. Like, I think a lot of it's still just kind of a group of guys, and we're really just basically like, well, I guess I'll throw a dart right over here on this guy. I mean, and you can make an argument for a lot of different ones. Like right now, like I've got Noah Fant and Gerald Everett in my queue. Like they both check things I like to see from a talent perspective, but it's not like I like Noah Fant's offense and his quarterback situation. For Everett, yeah, he's probably the fourth option on the team. Maybe he's the third. I mean, it's Keenan Allen number one, right? Then Mike Williams, then Eckler. So I mean, Everett's the fourth, but it is a really good offense. So
Jared Cook got 85 targets as a number 4 there last year. I mean, we'll take that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are worse things like that you could do. So fine, I'll go ahead and take Everett here. And
damn it, Dwain.
Yeah, I've come this far, and I want to go ahead and if I force myself to freaking draft Jarvis Landry, I have to take Jameis Winston, because I did not want to. I really wanted to take Myers. I wanted to take Jahan Dotson. There's so many guys I wanted to take over Landry, but knowing I had Michael Thomas and I could still get Jameis, I went ahead and pulled the trigger on Jameis here. Otherwise, like, why would I take Jarvis Landry when I did?
Unfreaking real. I had Everett and Higbee queued up, and they go 2 of the 3 picks. Just
whoops.
I am mad.
See, that's what you get for talking to me.
Yeah, I guess so, man. Oh my goodness, this is a disaster. I am panicking on live freaking stream. You know what? I just enjoyed Gus Edwards. I don't think it makes sense to my roster construction, but not enough people draft Gus Edwards. So welcome to the squad, Gus Bus. I don't know. When I grew up, averaging over 5 yards per carry every season was considered pretty good. Just because J.K. Dobbins is there doesn't mean it's illegal for NFL teams to have 2 good to great running backs on the same roster. Not interesting, but it's freaking May 25th, so the NFL world has to find some way how to take over the media cycle. Frank Reich saying that if he was a fantasy owner, he would be drafting Nyheim Hines this year. Note that last year, Nyheim Hines couldn't even get 100 touches. In Week 18, in a game that the Colts lost by 15 points, Nyheim Hines, their alleged pass down back, played 9 snaps, had 3 targets, 0 carries. Nate, offseason coach speak, or should we actually be behind Nyheim Hines, who, let's face it, before last year when Jonathan Taylor went Super Saiyan on everyone, Hines was providing some nice value, particularly in full PPR formats.
I feel like it's a little bit of offensive coach speak. I feel like it's one of those, well, put him at wide receiver, give him some more targets than he had last year, but still let Jonathan Taylor do everything that Jonathan Taylor does. So teams want to get their 2 running backs on the field, and I will believe it once it starts happening more often.
Yeah, like, do we think Frank Reich really considered the correlations here and like the opportunity cost of taking Nyheim Hines over some of the players with similar ADP? Dwain, I think he's full of shit.
I think he's also full of shit. I don't think anything like that went through his brain. I'm sure he's a smart guy, but I doubt any of the terms you just threw at me like went through his head.
I would also have to agree. Off the board this late, though, goes Ryan Tannehill. Dwain, we just recorded our Titans podcast today. Going to be out next Monday talking about Tannehill. He is awfully affordable where he's going, but again, just what is that best case upside for him? Still on the board, Trevor Lawrence, Matt Ryan, Daniel Jones, and Mac Jones. Nate, what are your thoughts on Ryan Tannehill? Because he is, based on the last 3 years, I mean, the worst he was last year. I believe he was a QB 14 in fantasy points per game if you just look at the quarterbacks that had at least 8 games. But he's not getting any younger. The offense is obviously, worse from a skill position talent standpoint. Overall thoughts on Tannehill, Nate, and if he's a value or just someone that maybe doesn't have enough upside in this best ball tournament format to really go chasing.
I mean, like at this late in the draft, I'm not sure there's many quarterbacks that I'd be putting ahead of him, but I definitely wouldn't be going earlier than this point on him. But like some of the quarterbacks available, Mac Jones, Daniel Jones, Trevor Lawrence is someone that I would be more happy with here, but Carson Wentz. So like, I think he is a player on the decline. I think with AJ Brown not being there, that hurts his fantasy production. I think as long as Derrick Henry is healthy, that'll hurt his fantasy production. So he should have some good games, but I don't even know like who I'd be really trying that hard to stack him with at this point.
That's the problem, man. Yeah, maybe Treylon Burks. That's the thing. If you get Treylon Burks early, maybe even Robert Woods, and it's between Tannehill and some similarly ranked guys that you don't have any stacking possibilities with, okay, that's fine. But I really don't think he necessarily qualifies as someone that just, no matter what, take ahead of Matt Ryan, Daniel Jones, your Trevor Lawrences of the world. I think he's kind of in that same tier, despite not really being the same sort of player from an age or play style perspective. I am going to be on the clock here in 2 picks. I need another tight end and quarterback right now, looking at Trevor Lawrence, Evan Ingram, and Hayden Hurst. So, Dwain, if you just go against roster construction to spite me, I'll hate you for it, but I might just respect you. What are you looking to accomplish here in these final few rounds?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's pretty easy. I've already got 2 tight ends. I have 2 quarterbacks, and I took a tight end and quarterback early. So I've got to hit running back and receiver with each of these last 4 picks. One of the guys I was really looking at, you and I talked about, in a pod that'll come out next week around the Titans with Hassan Haskins. He was a guy that I was definitely eyeing. If you look at my roster right now, I mean, I've got DeAndre Swift, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Chase Edmonds, and Ronald Jones. So like my running backs are pretty thin. I feel pretty good about my receivers and my other, obviously my onesie positions, but I've got to do something here. The problem is the value that's sitting here is really better at receiver, but I'm going to go ahead. Like at this point, like I've just seen people taking these guys all over the place. So I'm going to go ahead and take Keontae Ingram because we've got James Conner. We have Eno Benjamin. But look, come on, let's be real. Eno Benjamin has been there how long? And he hasn't been able to really carve out a role. Even last year, whenever we saw James Conner and Chase Edmonds dinged up, we did not see Eno Benjamin really play that much of a role. It was like Jonathan Ward or some weird shit like that. So I'm pretty much out at this point on Eno Benjamin. And then I'm also going to go ahead and take Wan'Dale Robinson. Looking at Robinson, look, Kadarius Toney's the guy that we like from the Giants. Kenny Golladay, you and I have talked about, like he has every chance to be the wide receiver 1 on the team. But I'm also looking at the coach and DeBoll. They did spend a 2nd-round pick on Wan'Dale Robinson. There was smoke ahead of the draft and even earlier in the offseason about them trying to move on from Toney. I don't think they've got an offer that they were willing to accept. But I mean, what happens with Toney? We don't know. Like, if they continue to have problems with him, they may be willing to take less for him. Toney flashed in a really big way in a small sample size and targets per route run, all the things that we loved last year. But I think there's a chance here that we could see Wan'Dale Robinson get on the field. And for if you look at all the rookie wide receivers that went in the 2nd round, like Wan'Dale has the biggest disconnect, his ADP versus where he was taken in the NFL draft.
It's weird, man. Wan'Dale and who was the other one we were talking about, Dwain, where they kind of had surprising draft capital and they're almost being like
Jahan Dotson.
Jahan Dotson.
Jahan Dotson for the 1st rounders is going like well after the other guys.
It just seems like they're almost being penalized for. Like people are like, how come this NFL team's decision didn't match what this, random single 40-year-old fantasy analyst said was going to happen this past, week or two. So yeah, like we might want something to happen, but ultimately, like we need to be trying to predict what the NFL teams are going to do. What we hope is going to happen does not freaking matter. On my 2 picks, formed a mini stack here with Evan Ingram and Trevor Lawrence. Lawrence at least going far past ADP. What am I missing with Evan Ingram? Because I ranked him like tight end 20 or something when he went to Jacksonville. In no way, shape, or form was I ever trying to be high on the guy, but he's going like tight end 25, 26. They just paid him $10 million. Like, Nate, do you really think they're going to split stuff between Evan Ingram and Dan Arnold? Because I don't. And at this price point, I'm fine to take a chance on it. There's a possibility Evan Ingram leads this team in targets.
I don't think it'll be a full split, but I think they did invest in Dan Arnold and he played well enough during his time last year that I could see Arnold still getting some playing time. And we've seen Ingram for years now and he just hasn't been that great. His fantasy value has been entirely based on the number of targets he gets. So he needs to have those targets, which if any tight end in this range gets a ton of targets, they'll do well.
With Evan Ingram, I mean, just over the last 2 years, finally stays healthy for the most part, works inside of a banged up Giants passing game, couldn't get going. But we've seen Jason Garrett do some weird things. It was pretty sad that the Giants' idea of like getting Ingram more involved was like running just ugly as hell tight end reverse. They did it like 3 times, pissed me off each and every time. We'll see what happens. Dwain, do you have particular thoughts on Arnold carving us out with Ingram? Because, look, if Ingram is the featured guy and he is going this late, like he's going to be a value. He's getting treated right now like a committee tight end that has 0 pass catching skills.
Yeah, I think it'll probably be a committee, but like I would lean to Ingram leading the way. My biggest problem with Ingram, like, he flashed when he was a rookie and in his second year and a lot of the metrics that we love. And man, it's just been a complete tailspin since then. It's been down, 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 down. So as much as we may want to blame it on the scheme and other things, like he just has not been a guy that's really been generating targets or that someone that his quarterback really wants to look to a lot, despite theoretically being a mismatched player, right? A big, fast guy getting to play against linebackers and safeties. I would expect Evan Ingram to still be garnering more targets than he has. So descending talent profile for a guy that was a former first-round pick. But yeah, if I had to put an edge, like I would say 65-35 will be the routes for Ingram, versus, the backup tight ends there.
Ingram at $9 million per year, aka 1 year, is the 12th highest number, 11th highest if you call Taysom Hill a quarterback, which, like, come on, what the hell is he at this point? Yeah, I'm more in on Evan Ingram, particularly round 16. Like, come on. And that's the trouble we run into. So I'm sure there'll be a PFF fantasy, quote graphic of me saying I'm in on Evan Ingram with no other context added to the conversation. But you know what? We'll roll with the punches, watch the film, and get better. Nate, you went ahead and took Darrell Williams, still listed as a KC running back, but now potentially the RB2 in Arizona. I want to see what the contract details were on that. Instead, all we got was a Patrick Mahomes anecdote about how he apparently recommended Darrell Williams. Like, if Mahomes really loved Darrell Williams, wouldn't he have been pushing for the Chiefs to re-sign him? Like, I'm confused how that plays into anything other than the media just, fawning over every single thing that comes out of Mahomes' mouth. What are your thoughts on Darrell Williams? Like, do you actually think he has a chance of getting something close to that Chase Edmonds role?
I'm not sure it'll be quite the Chase Edmonds role. I've probably got him more at this point because with the running backs that were available, a lot of them, even if there's an injury to the top running back, I wouldn't trust them to be an every down guy. But I could see it in Arizona if there's an injury to James Conner. I could see Williams having an every down role since he at times played every down in Kansas City, depending on who was healthy and who was injured. But I could very well see him having a huge role if James Conner gets hurt. So that's the main reason I got him here.
I went with Paris Campbell at the end of the 17th round because I love Ohio State and I can't quit Paris Campbell. Okay, guys? Like, I love it. Fantasy football is supposed to be fun. I love Paris Campbell. Let me draft him and get off my freaking back, okay? But seriously, he should be a starting wide receiver. Like, I think he'll beat out. Honestly, Alec Pierce's skill set seems to overlap more so with Ashton Dulin than it does with Paris Campbell. I'm optimistic Campbell could even be in two wide receiver sets alongside Michael Pittman. Maybe not, but hey, if Matt Ryan does bring this offense up, not super pass heavy, but a little bit more, and maybe just maybe he stays healthy, Paris Campbell, we know he can do some good things with the ball in his hands. And now I will take my final pick. I got two Bears wide receivers in the queue, which is horrific to really look at and say out loud, but I'm going to go ahead and go with Byron Pringle. Low key, I think he got $6 million. Like, that's not insignificant. He should be out there. Not insignificant. Good English, Ian. But he should be out there in two wide receiver sets and a terrible offense. If I'm going to take a wide receiver this late, I want them to be a starter. Bold proclamation, I know. You got to be on the field to score fantasy points, everyone. And I don't think James Washington is necessarily going to serve that after the 6 weeks as he goes off the board. So, Nate, who are you looking for in the final round of this draft?
Definitely a wide receiver. I think Zay Jones is the guy that I'll end up getting. Like you said, we want starting wide receiver, not a great offense, but they gave him plenty of money this offseason. So expect him to be the starter. He's pleasantly surprised in recent years with how he played compared to the beginning of his career. So maybe Jacksonville's able to use him even better than the Raiders were. So I'm willing to take a chance.
Samaje Perine off the board late. Low key, I don't want to say one of the better handcuffs, but if Mixon goes down, Perine is going to work ahead of Chris Evans. I think it'll be more 60-40, potentially 50-50 than it was last year in the one game that we saw Perine take over. But Dwain, maybe Perine is someone that we should be paying a little bit more attention to in these later rounds of the draft, because even if he wouldn't be like approaching the RB1 territory that Joe Mixon is, Perine would still be someone that'd be pretty tough to keep outside the top 20, top 30 running backs should Mixon miss time.
Yeah, I think we could see Evans take on more of a passing role, like if we were to see Joe Mixon go down. And I'm not so sure that Evans doesn't just pass Perine, but like as of right now today, yeah, I agree. Like he's the guy that we would we would have to say is the right handcuff, for the Bengals. Honestly, I've been avoiding it just because I want to hear more this preseason. Like, that's one of the backfields where I am monitoring, like, okay, let's look at the backup. I'm not sure we know who it is today, but maybe we will once training camp, is closer to being over.
We talk about there being a difference in, your Derrick Henrys and Austin Eckler's in the world and receiving, obviously, but it's more so just saying, like, Derrick Henry, you can catch a swing pass even if he's not out there running routes like Eckler. Honestly, man, what we saw from Chris Evans, I don't want to say he's Eckler level yet, but he had a nice, 30-second highlight film from catching the ball lined up as a wide receiver. Like, Evans was legit doing some really nice things from the preseason straight on through the regular season when they split him out wide. So I do think that maybe they'd be better off featuring him ahead of Perine if it gets to that point. As we saw, though, even on fourth down in the Super Bowl, who's out there? Samaje Perine. So I do think they probably will continue to stick with that. Sorry, Bengals fans, for bringing up that terrible memory. But guys, before we get out of here, let's run through the teams. Nathan, go ahead and start. I got the draft board pulled up for everyone.
Sure. So big thing with my team, I got the Viking stack of Kirk Cousins and all three of his wide receivers. So happy to get all of those Vikings. Was fairly happy with the running backs that I had. With Kamara, Williams, Montgomery, and I'm happy with Stevenson, Henderson, and Williams, all guys that I think could have very significant roles if there's an injury to their starters in those situations. Wide receiver, I could have been a little bit happier with how things ended up going at wide receiver, but took plenty of swings outside of the Vikings guys, and hopefully a couple of them hit. And tight end, I'm happy with Dallas Goedert and Alberto in Denver. I think both of them should have fairly good years, so hopefully they alternate weeks of which one is good.
Let's go around the horn and we'll do one thing we love and hate about each other's teams. Nate, I love your Viking stack and just being able to get Osborne there around 13. One of those things where we talk about handcuffing and, okay, I understand, like, you don't want to necessarily go Zeke and Pollard on the same squad and understanding that one of those guys are probably going to be canceled out and thus you're losing a top 8 pick. But when you can just add someone like a KJ Osborne in round 13 or later, like, I'm more okay doing it there. And I think that you're looking at the typical 13th round pick. And if it helps in relation to your roster, by all means. I do hate the Ramondre Stevenson pick. I just don't know where the best case scenario is. I really think, like, Damian Harris could get hurt. James White could not come back and Stevenson could still be like an RB3. I just think that Patriots backfield is destined to continue using a bunch of backs. Dwain, thoughts on Nate's team? Feel free to be nicer or meaner than I was.
No, I love the stack, just like what you said. I also love the fact that he got Albert O. I'm pro Albert O always. Man, the guy's underlying metrics, yes, it's been unlimited routes, but, like, wow, the targets per route run, the yards per route run, like, are up there in the elite tight end space. Yeah, he's got a lot of competition with Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, these other guys. KJ Hamler's like their fourth receiver, right? We know Tim Patrick works on the outside, but none of those guys are absolute elite ballers either, right? They all have question marks. Like, there's a scenario where Albert O ends up as the top receiver on this team, and maybe that only means 22% of the targets because they're spreading around across everyone. But I don't think many people are accounting for that. So I really do love that pick. As far as one thing that I'm not as crazy about, I think the biggest thing would be Nate. I would have came back and grabbed a Packer for that week 17 stack at some point, like, with all of those Vikings, just knowing how Best Ball Mania structure works. Like, did you get a Packer? I'm making sure. I could be wrong. Like, you might have got one.
I don't think so.
Sammy Watkins went off right in front of you, though, so I don't even know if you were thinking that. But that was no, you could have had Sammy Watkins instead of Odell Beckham Jr. Like, I probably would have done that just from a stack perspective. That, like, if I make it that far,
as a Packer.
Do what?
Maybe Odell Beckham becomes a Packer, and then
hey,
Galaxy brain, I love it.
If that happens, and hey, dude, that's feasible.
Possible,
looking at the Packers depth chart right now, I think that's very feasible. So touche, Nate. Nate wins. Good comeback.
All right, looking at Team Free Duke Johnson, running backs, I got Eckler, ETN, Sanders, CPAT, and then didn't feel the need to go too much more position until Michael Carter and Gus Edwards. Again, probably didn't even need to get Gus there. I just wasn't a huge fan of some of the available wide receivers and tight ends at that point. Got sniped a couple times as well during that range. Wide receivers started off strong, Devontae, Pittman, and McLaurin in rounds 2 through 4. Kind of looking like I maybe could have gone a little bit earlier, though. Having Rondale and Galladay as my 4 and 5 doesn't feel great, but I do like Jacoby, hopefully holding things down. Tight end, Evan Ingram, Irv Smith. And quarterback, I got Kyler and Lawrence. So, Nate, if you just want to say 2 nice things about how great this team is, that's fine, or you can do the one nice, one mean.
Well, I mean, I have to start with getting Austin Eckler that late in the first round. Is my thing that I like about the team. So,
Thank you.
Not sure Eckler will be quite as good as last year, but definitely late first round is an excellent time to get him. I'm a little concerned about some of the like middle wide receivers that you got. Kenny Galladay. We'll just see if he can play with the number of wide receivers they have in New York, though. It's going to be hard to get anyone to get that many targets. And then Jacoby Myers as well. Just so crowded of a wide receiver space. The Patriots and Giants both feel like teams where they have a ton of good wide receivers, just no great ones.
I consider Galladay and Jacoby priced closer to their floors than ceilings. With that said, it's also pretty clear their ceilings are not quite as high as a lot of other receivers going before them. So fair points all around, Nate. Dwain, you got some lovely things to say about my team?
I really like the team. I mean,
thanks.
Nate mentioned what you got with Eckler. You definitely got a value there. I love where you got ETN towards the end of the 5th round. You got an explosive playmaker that's going to catch passes. Yes, he's coming back from injury, but at least it happened really early last year before the season even got going. So I think that's a plus. We've talked about Kyler Murray so many times on our pod. Like, he's basically a cheat code right now in round 6, but Lamar doesn't usually make it to the end of the 5th. So I had to go with Lamar. Kyler is a player that I'm taking a lot in round 6. A lot of it because of the reasons that Nate was just talking about, some of the questionable, not necessarily some of the guys you took, later, but just some of the questions at the wide receiver spot, right? We get into these ranges where we love Devonta Smith as a talent. Like, there's nothing wrong, but run heavy offense, 3 other guys, like I'm facing him, or I could just go ahead and take Kyler Murray and get a player that could throw for 5,000 yards, could also rush for 1,000. I think he's legit the only guy in the league that could do those 2 things together. I'm not hating on Josh Allen, folks. We love Josh Allen. Josh Allen can score 15 rushing touchdowns. Here, we'll give him a different kind of upside, right, than Kyler Murray. So no, I really like it. If there's one thing that I would have changed about your draft, I mean, look, I'm not crazy about Evan Ingram as my tight end 2 when Irv Smith's my tight end 1. I think that's the thing that has to go right for you here, right? One of those 2 tight ends, or those 2 tight ends have to compare. I mean, they have to pair together to give you enough weeks where you can really feel good about it. I think, and you know how much I love Irv Smith, but if I'm building this way, I'm probably trying to get 3 tight ends to cover all my bases.
Yeah, I'm on my second, like 4.3% big wave over here. So I got to quit being such a lightweight, keep the mind sharp. And I will say with these wide receivers as well, something that was intriguing me today because, again, I got my Dameon Pierce take off my chest. But the one thing I will say about Pierce is we're seeing a big difference in people just loading up on wide receivers. I mean, Pierce is going pick 121 as the RB38. Like, the next player in ADP is Kenny Galladay. He's the wide receiver 57. So we have like a 20-player gap disparity between the running backs and wide receivers. Could be something to be said about trying to prioritize wide receiver a little bit earlier when you still have legit RB3s available this deep into the draft. Dwain, talk to people about your team that, as I scroll through it, looks pretty solid.
Yeah, it looks good. I don't love the team. I like the team. I came away with Kyle Pitts at the end of round 3, Lamar Jackson at the end of round 5. So that pretty much meant, rounds 6 through 11 were wide open just to attack running back and receiver, which is what I did. But I'll give folks just a quick recap. So at quarterback, I've got Lamar Jackson, and then I've got Jameis Winston, who I took to go with Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry. But running backs are DeAndre Swift, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Chase Edmonds, Ronald Jones, Keontae Ingram. So maybe Darrell Williams will be the backup. I'm banking on Keontae Ingram being the backup for James Conner. So Nate or I will win if James Conner goes down, or maybe neither. It'll end up then being Benjamin, and we'll just we know nothing. So those are the running backs. That's the spot I'm the least comfortable with. I got sniped a couple of times actually on the backs that I had setting over in the queue. And Ronald Jones, look, I got him in the 11th round. I already have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and I had him at the top of my queue, and he was an auto pick. Like, I wanted to go running back, but he wasn't. Like, this is me being honest. Like, I didn't really want to go with Ronald Jones there. But having said that, looking at it now, like, I'm not necessarily – it's fine. It's where I got him in the 11th round. It's still the Chiefs offense. If one of these 2 guys happens to break away, or, you could have an injury early in the season where, Jones has to carry the team. Then Ronald Jones gets hurt later in the year, and you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire carrying the team. So there's just a lot of weird stuff that can happen. So I'm not going to overthink it. But I definitely think running back's my weakest spot. I love the receivers with CeeDee Lamb, DJ Moore, Michael Thomas, Sky Moore, Chase Claypool, Jarvis Landry. and Wan'Dale Robinson and Antonio Brown was my last pick. And basically he's just like, look, he may not sign anywhere, but Brown was still playing at such a high level last year. I feel like everybody's just forgotten him, right? Like he's a better player right now than Odell Beckham Jr., despite the fact that he's way older. Like if you looked at his targets per route run, was better than Mike Evans, better than Chris Godwin, yards per route run, better than both those guys, better against man coverage than both those guys. Like he was Brady's dude. And then he lost his mind, which I get it. He may not get another chance, but I felt like in the last round, taking a swing on a guy like Antonio Brown, I'm okay with. I like it better in redraft than best ball, just because right now, like that's a complete dead square if he doesn't play. And I could have another one in Wan'Dale Robinson, right? I could have another one in Keontae Ingram. So right away, then you're looking at 3 dead squares to start the season if those guys don't do anything before any injury. So I don't like that.
Love the Gerald Everett late round tight end, sniped me. So F you, but okay, it was a good pick. I can at least be man enough to admit that. I think more and more when we look at it, I mean, 85, 90 targets from Justin Herbert. Like, let's take that over a bunch of these other guys going around the similar spot. And, even getting someone like J.D. McKissick in round 17 that helps shore up your soft running back room. Like, I know McKissick doesn't necessarily have that like 3-down upside, but he had the same amount of top 12 finishes as Antonio Gibson last year before McKissick got hurt in the first place. So especially a full-point PPR would be better, but McKissick is someone that just really gets written off and is someone that if you are in an RB needy situation like you were, he can probably get you through a few weeks. I would have liked to maybe see you prioritize Devin Duvernay over Wan'Dale that late. You can probably argue Wan'Dale has more upside as a second-round pick, but Duvernay getting that Lamar stack as number 2, just more so a point that I do like Duvernay in these later rounds of the draft, and credit to the Griff for being able to land him in round 17. Nate, thoughts on Dwain's team?
I really like from the 6 to 10 range, some of the picks that have a wide range of possibilities that if they hit, they could be among the best players at their position. Like you were saying earlier with Michael Thomas, like at one point he was the best wide receiver after all this stuff happened. So there's a chance he could get back up there. Guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who was injured last year and now should be the receiving back in Kansas City. So now it's been a couple of years, but he could finally be the back that we thought he could be in Kansas City. Chase Edmonds being the guy that Miami invested in at running back, even though they have a ton of guys, but he's the one that they gave a lot of money to. So really like a number of those picks. If I'm going to complain about one thing, I probably would have gone with Cook over Swift with the second pick. It might just be me trusting PFF grades too much, but Swift just hasn't graded well so far in his career. He, compared to the other running backs, has been near the bottom in a couple of different categories of the backs that see a significant amount of playing time. So,
yeah, he was terrible in PFF rushing grade. I mean, abysmal.
I thought we're only allowed to talk about Saquon being a bad rusher last year, but okay, I guess we can apply.
We can do it among friends here.
Yeah.
So, go ahead. Sorry, Nate.
If I was going to say, so even though there's not a clear path for him to lose a lot of his opportunities right now, but if he continues to not play as well, then there could be we saw Craig Reynolds do stuff at the end of last year of all people.
In Swift's defense, it was unfortunate when he got hurt because he had that Steelers game, and I forget who the other team was, but I remember I think it was the Pittsburgh game or the week after where he literally forced as many tackles on the ground in that game as he had in the previous month and a half of action. So it seemed like right as he was starting to come on as a rusher, unfortunately got hurt. You would think as the sort of young talented player he is, maybe the best days could still be ahead. So we know the best days are still ahead for everyone playing over at Underdog Fantasy this summer. The best place to play fantasy football. And remember, everyone, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100 when you sign up with the promo code PFF. And all you got to do is play 10 of those dollars using promo code PFF to get a free PFF subscription. The best deal we will have all summer in terms of getting this free PFF subscription. So what are you waiting for? Head over to underdogfantasy.com or the App Store, play $10 with code PFF, and draft your best ball mania team today. Fellas, good stuff. We'll be back here every Tuesday or Wednesday throughout the summer with Nate, Dwain, Kevin Cole, Jared Evans, the whole PFF fantasy crew. Nate, anything else you want to get off your chest?
We have to decide which one of the three of us is going to tweet out asking which of the squads is better. That's usually Jared's job, but one of us will have to do it to see who everyone thinks has the best team out of the three of us.
Sounds like you just volunteered, Nate, so I appreciate that.
Way to go, Nate.
Dwain, anything else?
I don't want to say anything that might get work assigned to me. No, man. I'm good. And I love doing these. And I'll tell you what, like doing these and talking the whole time, like it's like, and with his pick, as quick as these picks are at 30 seconds, like, you and I have talked about it, Ian, but it was nice. Like I was in my own queue. I had a screen I could look at. I was never lost. Usually Nate, whenever Ian and I are drafting together, and I'm like trying to watch his screen share of the draft going along. And like half of the pod is like me telling Ian to switch over to a different view so I can see which players are gone out of the queue. So
I think doing separate teams is our solution, Dwayne. Like we should just do that more times than not.
Yeah, I think I think it does make it easier. I'll just have to, we'll have to get me set up, with Underdog for all the stuff. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I want to thank all you listeners for tuning in. Again, we'll be back weekly. You can check out the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast for weekly best ball streams, additional ones between Dwayne and myself. And again, the fantasy crew will be back here each and every week. So for Nate, for Dwayne, I'm Ian Hartitz. Until next time, take care, everybody.